Good morning. I'm Sarah. I'm a survivor, author, speaker, and clarity coach. And I help women who've been through abuse, betrayal, learn how to become safe, stable, and strong. Sometimes, now and then, I share my morning devotions with you here on Facebook. Right now, I've been reading through the book Hinds on High Places, which is an allegory about how to navigate and overcome fear as you walk through suffering. It's an incredible story. And we are on episode 5. Thank you for joining me here. Let's do something that's good and gentle for your soul. Also, if you have a friend who would love to join us, tag them underneath or just hit share and pass it on to someone else. Join me as we read together. Now, Much Afraid is the main hero in our story, and she has had the seed of love planted in her heart. She's also getting ready to join the Good Shepherd and the Chief Shepherd, I think they call it, and go to the high places where she will learn to not be fearful anymore. So, she's just had a tremendous and terrifying interaction with all of her family called the Fearings. We've never had Fearings in our lives, have we? I mean, I have. I don't know about you. And in the dark hours, just before the dawn, after this terribly traumatizing experience, being held captive by all the Fearings, Much Afraid started off to look for the shepherd. So that's where we're at. Grab a cozy blanket or a cozy pillow, something hot to drink, and let's read together. She could not go quickly because of her lameness, but she limped along the village streets toward the open fields and the sheepfolds. As she went, she whispered to herself, "Oh, shepherd, when you said that love and pain go together, how truly you spoke." Had she but known, or even dimly sensed what it would be like, could she possibly have consented to let him put the thorn in her heart? It was too late now. It was there. She had said yes. Love was there and pain too, and she must find the shepherd. At last, limping and breathless, she came to the sheepfolds, still silent and dim in the starlight. 1 or 2 under-shepherds were there, keeping watch over the flocks through the night, and when they heard footsteps approaching, they rose up from the ground and went to meet the intruder. "Who are you?" they challenged her in the darkness, and then stared in amazement as their lanterns flashed on the white face and frightened eyes of Much Afraid. "Is the chief shepherd here?" she gasped, as she leaned against the wall of the sheepfold, panting and trying to recover her breath. "No," said the watchman, staring at her curiously. "He left the flocks in our charge this night and gave his orders. He said that he had to make a journey to the mountains, as he often does, and he did not say when he would be back." Much Afraid could not speak. She moaned and pressed her hands to her heart, feeling as if it would break. What could she do now? He was gone. He had thought she did not want to go and had not waited for her. Then, aching with despair, she leaned tremblingly against the wall of the sheepfold. She remembered the shepherd's face and the loving kindness of the look with which he had invited her to accompany him to the mountains. It came to her mind that he who understood her so well, who knew all about her fears and had compassion on her, would not leave until he was quite sure that she really meant to refuse to go with him. She lifted her eyes, looked across the valley toward the eastern mountains and the high places. A faint streak of light was appearing in the east, and she knew that the sun would rise. Suddenly she remembered the last verse of the sad song which she had read, the last verse on the page that she had not waited to turn over. It came whispering into her mind just as a little bird began to sing in one of the bushes beside her. "And then, in the dawn I saw him, he whom my heart loves so. I found him, I held him, and I told him I could never let him go." Much Afraid ceased trembling and said to herself, I will go to the trysting place to see if he is waiting for me there. With scarcely a word to the watchman, she turned and hurried southward over the field where Craven Fear had met her toward the sheep pool. Almost forgetting that she was lame, she sped toward the distant trees, which fringed the pool. Just as the sky turned red above the mountains, the joyous, babbling sound of cascading water reached her ears, and as she hurried forward, Much Afraid suddenly found a cascade of song pouring forth from her own heart. He was there, standing by the pool, looking toward her with the light of the sunrise shining on his face. As Much Afraid stumbled toward him, he stepped quickly to her side, and she fell at his feet, sobbing, Oh, my Lord, take me with you as you said. Don't leave me behind. I knew you would come, he said gently, but Much Afraid, why were you not at the trysting place last evening? Did you not hear me when I passed your cottage and called? I wanted to tell you to be ready to start with me this morning at sunrise. As he spoke, the sun rose fully over the peaks of the mountains and bathed them both in a lovely golden light. I am here, said Much Afraid, still kneeling at his feet, and I will go with you anywhere. Then the shepherd took her by the hand, and they started for the mountains. And we'll start chapter 4. It was the early morning of a beautiful day. The valley lay as though still asleep. The only sounds were the joyful laughter of the running streams and the gay little songs of the birds. The dew sparkled on the grass, and the wildflowers glittered like little jewels. Especially lovely were the wild anemones, purple, pink, and scarlet, which dotted the pastures everywhere, thrusting their beautiful little faces up among the struggling thorns. Sometimes the shepherd and Much Afraid walked over patches of thousands of tiny little pink or mauve blossoms, each minutely small and yet all together forming a brilliant carpet, far richer than seen in any king's palace. Once the shepherd stooped and touched the flowers gently with his fingers, and then said to Much Afraid with a smile, Humble yourself, and you will find that love is spreading a carpet of flowers beneath your feet. Much Afraid looked at him earnestly. I have often wondered about the wildflowers, she said. It does seem strange that such unnumbered multitudes should bloom in the wild places of the earth, where perhaps nobody sees them, and the goats and the cattle can walk over them and just crush them to death. They have so much beauty and sweetness to give, and no one on whom to lavish it, nor who will even appreciate it. The look on the shepherd turned on her was very beautiful. Nothing my father and I have made is ever wasted, he said quietly, and the little wildflowers have a wonderful lesson to teach. They offer themselves so sweetly and confidently and willingly, even if it seems there is no one to appreciate them, just as though they sang a joyous little song to themselves that it is so happy to love, even if one is not loved in return. I must tell you a great truth, Much Afraid, which only a few understand. All the fairest beauties in the human soul, its greatest victories, and its most splendid achievements are always those which no one else knows anything about, or can only dimly guess at. Every inner response of the human heart to love, and every conquest over self-love, is a new flower on the tree of love. Many a quiet, ordinary, and hidden life, unknown to the world, is a veritable garden in which love's flowers and fruits have come to such perfection that it is a place of delight where the King of Love himself walks and rejoices with his friends. Some of my servants have indeed won great visible victories and are rightly loved and reverenced by other men, but always their greatest victories are like the wildflowers, the ones which no one knows about. If you learn this lesson now, down here in the valley, Much Afraid, then when you get to the steep places of the mountains, it will comfort you. I'm curious. Do you ever feel like the majority or even the entirety of your accomplishments and victories and beauties are all things that no one knows about. I know I felt that way. The things that matter most are things that no one has any clue about. They're hidden. They're down in the depths of your soul. And it's okay, because sometimes the most intense things, the most beautiful things, are things that we don't get accolades for, things that we don't have that stand out for other people to comment on. But God knows them. Then the shepherd added, "Come, the birds are all singing so joyously. Let us join them too, and the flowers shall suggest the theme of our song." So they walked down the valley toward the river, and they sang together another of the old songs in the shepherd's book, singing the parts in turn. Just as they finished singing, they came to a place where a rushing stream poured itself across the path they were following and went cascading down the other side. It was running so swiftly and singing so loudly that it seemed to fill the valley around them with its laughing voice. As the shepherd lifted Much Afraid across the slippery wet stones, she said to him, "I do wish I knew what it is that all running water sings. Sometimes, in the silence of the night, I lie in bed and listen to the voice of the little stream which runs past our cottage garden. It sounds so happy and so eager, as though it were repeating to itself over and over again some very lovely secret message. I think all running water seems to be singing the same song, either loud and clear or soft and low. I do wish I knew what the waters were saying. It is quite different from the voice of the sea and of salt waters, but I can never understand it. It's an unknown tongue. Tell me, shepherd, do you know what all the waters sing as they hurry on their way?" The shepherd smiled again, and they stood silently for a few moments by the little torrent, which seemed to shout even more loudly and exultantly as though it knew they had paused to listen. Suddenly, as Much Afraid stood beside the shepherd, it seemed as though her ears and her understanding were open, and bit by bit the water language became clear. It is, of course, impossible to write it in water language, but this is the best I can do to translate it. Of course, it is a very poor effort, for though a water song may perhaps be set to music, words are quite a different matter. But it went something like this. "Come, oh come, let us away, lower and lower every day. Oh, what joy it is to race down to find the lowest place. This is the dearest law we know, that it is happy to go low. Sweetest urge and sweetest will, let us go down lower still. Hear the summons night and day, calling us to come away from the heights. We leap and flow to the valleys down below, always answering to the call to the lowest place of all. Sweetest urge and sweetest pain, to go low and rise again." "That is very puzzling," said Much Afraid, for she had listened for a little and found that this was the refrain, repeated over and over again, though with 1,000 variations of little trills and murmurs and bubbles and splashing sighs. "Let us go down lower still," the water seems to be singing so gladly, because it is hurrying to go down to the lowest place, and yet you are calling me to the highest places. What does it mean?" "The high places," answered the shepherd, "are the starting places for the journey down to the lowest place in the world. When you have hinds feet and can go leaping on the mountains and skipping on the hills, you will be able, as I am, to run down from the heights in the gladdest self-giving, and then go up to the mountains again. You will be able to mount to the high places swifter than eagles, for it is only up on the high places of love that anyone can receive the power to pour themselves down in an utter abandonment of self-giving." This is very important, because often, far too often, we've been taught that we need to just give up ourselves. And it's true that we are all called to live in self-sacrificial giving to others. But it is not true that we should do that from a place of emptiness at the bottom. The only way that we can give gladly and safely to others is when we have been filled, when we are already able to walk in the high places, to know exactly who we are, to have a strong internal sense of security and identity. And that is when we can safely give sacrificially to others, doing it gladly instead of in slavery. This saying seemed very mysterious and strange, but now that her ears had been opened to understand the water song, she heard it repeated over and over again by all the little streams which crossed their pathway or ran beside it. It seemed, too, that the wildflowers were also singing the same sort of song, only in yet another language, a color language, which, like the water tongue, could only be understood by the heart and not the mind. They seemed to have a little chorus all their own, in which thousands upon thousands of them were singing different color notes. This is the law by which we live. It is so sweet to give. After that, it seemed to Much Afraid that all the little birds were chirping and trilling and lilting a tiny theme song also, with unnumbered variations, but still with one chorus breaking in all the time. This is the joy of all winged life above. Happy it is to be able to love. I never knew before, said Much Afraid suddenly, that the valley is such a beautiful place and so full of song. The shepherd laughed and answered, only love can really understand the music and the beauty and the joy which was planted in the heart of all created things. Have you forgotten that just 2 days ago I planted the seed of love in your heart? Already it has begun to make you hear and see things which you did not notice before. As love grows in you, Much Afraid, you will come to understand many things which you never dreamed of before. You will develop the gift of understanding many tongues, and you will learn to speak in love's own language too. But first, you must learn to spell out the alphabet of love and to develop Hinds' feet. Both of these things you will learn on the journey to the high places. And now here we are at the river, and over on the other side the foothills of the mountains begin. There we shall find your 2 guides waiting for you. We'll stop there. I would love to hear your thoughts about today's reading and this part of the story. Why don't you drop me a comment underneath? And, like I said at the beginning, if you have a friend who would enjoy this story, or who's going through sorrow and suffering right now, or who is dealing with being very much afraid, tag them underneath. Send this to them. Invite them to join us every morning on the weekdays for this special journey. If you're stumbling through your own steps to healing after experiencing abuse, or you're drowning in post-separation abuse, I would invite you to join me in my monthly group coaching club, where we can work together through all of those things. I'll drop the link to the scoop right underneath. I would love to see you and work with you there. All right, I'll see you next time.